Hello friends, this is Worm, long overdue for a trim and with mismatched gameplay in the background here. And today I wanted to talk about bows. Now, the idea of this came from Swarly, pardon me. From Swarly, he basically asked me if I could do a video about should bows be nerfed. And at the time he commented that, I thought about it and I felt like I wasn't really qualified enough to speak directly on the matter, right? Like, I'm like, well, I don't really know. I haven't noticed a lot of bow usage in my lobbies, but I've seen kind of here and there just some people talking about bows, you know, some forum posts every now and then, and the occasional YouTuber mentioning it in their video. So I figured we'd use this opportunity to talk about where bows are and maybe some of the reasons why they are so, I guess, becoming more popular, right? Now, first and foremost, before we go any further, if you're not subscribed, go down there, hit the sub button so that you too can be a part of our daily Destiny conversations. And bows, right? Now, bows are an interesting thing because bows have not been changed really in a long time. In fact, I think that even with all the zoom / range changes, I think that bows didn't even get any of those changes, right? So bows have been where they are for a long time. Right, they're weapons that require 2 drawn shots to hit, right? So they have pretty slow optimal TTKs. Like, you know, the TTK for, you know, even the fastest drawing bow, I think is still pretty high. Like, I don't think it's like competitive at all. And that is including like if you already have a fully drawn arrow from the time you release the arrow to the time you draw the next one and shoot it. That's not including the initial draw time for the first arrow, right? And so I think it's very interesting that bows are slowly climbing up, you know, in discussion and people talking about them, right? And I think it's interesting because, of course, every time we have a meta, it starts this way, right? It starts with, hey, like it's talked about very little, like it's kind of, you know, hush hush. You hear whispers of it here and there, but as time goes on, it gets more and more common amongst Destiny discussions, right? And typically when we do discussions on whether things need nerfs or not, it's typically, you know, like where conditional finality is, right? Conditional finality is really up there. Like it's hotly debated right now. But we're going to address bows a little bit early on here because I don't necessarily know if bows need a nerf. Right? And this is kind of a crazy thing to say because I know there's a lot of you who do feel like bows are oppressive, overpowered. I mean, I have the forums pulled up over here on my screen, and I've seen 2 posts already about Wish Ender of all bows being problematic in PvP. And we'll talk about Wish Ender and Limonarch and the exotic bows in just a little bit more directly. But I just want to talk about bows in general. And the best thing that I can think of to compare bows to is hand cannons, right? Because bows are not aggressive, you know, in your face, like I'm gonna rush you down with a bow kind of weapons, right? They are stay back and peek shot. What else is stay back and peek shot? Hand cannons, right? Igneous Hammer. I can't tell you how many games somebody likes to be scared and go behind the wall and then come out and take a shot and go back behind the wall because they're scared to engage, right? What makes bows any difference than a hand cannon, aside from the fact that instead of taking now 3 shots, it only takes 2 from a bow, right? And the reason why I think this is an important discussion to have is, you know, it's interesting because when you get hit with a bow, you actually have a pretty substantial amount of time to react. It's not like you get hit with a bow and then you're immediately smacked with another shot, right? Unless somebody has, you know, maybe Hush or maybe an exotic bow with one of its perks on that makes it draw very quick, something like that, much faster, whatever, or something along those lines. So I think that if you get hit with a bow, it should automatically click, hey, I should take cover. My opinion, it's not much different than a sniper rifle. You know, if you're peeping a lane and you run down a lane and somebody shoots you with a sniper and they get a body shot, right? They don't hit a crit, but they hit a body shot. Are you going to immediately cross back out in the lane? No, right? Like that just doesn't make sense to do. And I think that any good player or even a semi-decent player can tell you the same thing. Like, you don't challenge a sniper. It's kind of the same principle. Like, when you get hit with a bow, why would you come out of cover and challenge? Why would you challenge a lane? Why would you do, this, that, and the other? And I know the difference between a bow and a sniper is that snipers have much less aim assistance. Like bow, since it's a primary weapon, much easier to hit shots with, right? But at the same time, the difference between bows and snipers are snipers, your follow-up shots are pretty immediate, right? With a bow, you have to draw, and not only do you have to draw, but you have to like have your timings right, unless you're using Oathkeeper, because a perfect draw only lasts for like not even 0.5 seconds. I want to say it's like 0.35 seconds, something like that. It's a very short amount of time where you can get a perfect draw off. Now, of course, Oathkeepers do exist, which kind of negates the need for that. But you are dedicating your entire exotic armor piece to a specific weapon archetype. And so, players are talking about bows like they are just broken and OP. Like, where have y'all been for the past X amount of months when bows have just basically been unchanged? Right? Like it's okay if hand cannons can peek shot, right? Go behind a corner and just peek out for 1 second, take a shot and go back. But like it becomes a problem when bows do it. Right. And I know, the exotic bows, like I said, we're going to talk about the exotic bows as their own kind of separate discussion here. And I know that people have a bad taste in their mouth from Liminarch, right? The Liminarch meta, where pre-Liminarch nerf, where it would absolutely, destroy your health. It would stop health regeneration for the longest time. Like it was frustrating to many, many players. But that's an exotic bow. That's not normal bows, right? Say it takes something like a Strident Whistle. Strident Whistle got a god roll on it, or Pre-Astionax, right? Pre-Astionax adept with the best draw time, stuff like that. You got a 500 draw time on your precision frame bow, right? That's insanely good. That's insanely powerful, and it is. But at the same time, it's still a legendary bow. It's still, no matter how you twist it or no matter how much you want to make it, one shot, it's not going to have the potential to one shot. A bow that can one shot a player, that's when it becomes problematic, unless it's in the heavy slot, right? Leviathan's Breath is the one exception. I think Leviathan's Breath really should one hit Guardians of the Body, not just to the crit. But we're not going to go off on that, tangent right now. But players, they're talking about bows like they're overpowered. Like nothing has changed about bows. And unlike something, like we talked about with the conditional finality nerf, where certain weapons have been nerfed, so, conditional finality moves in, and stuff like that, like the power vacuum, so to speak. There aren't any weapons that have been substantially nerfed that I can recall. You can correct me in the comments because I might be wrong on that. But there aren't any substantial weapon nerfs that have happened recently to warrant bows becoming more powerful, right? Like scout rifles are still incredibly viable at long ranges, right? Sniper rifles have always been viable at long ranges. I'm not sure where people are getting the idea of, hey, let's use bows now. And of course, bows, they are good at one thing. They are good at peak shooting, and they're good at taking chunks of enemy health off, right? And we can't dispute that. But it's the same thing with, like, what are hand cannons good at? Hand cannons are good at peak shooting. They've got great aim assistance, and they're good mid to long range. Bows, kind of fill the same role, but they're a little bit slower, but they deal more damage. Scout rifles, what is a scout rifle good for? It's good for sitting at a good distance back, right? And we're not going to go over every archetype of weapon, but every archetype of weapon has a role that it plays, and this is the general role, right? Like submachine guns, they all have that same role of, hey, close range, close to mid range aggression. That's the name of the game, right? Bows, they fill this role of, they cannot one shot kill, but they can chunk enemies' health down substantially, and they can kind of prevent and counter snipers from attempting to peek lanes and stuff like that. Because if you get hit with a bow, right? Especially if you get hit in the precision or in the face with a bow, right? You are not going to re-peek no matter what you do, right? You could have the best sniper aim in the world. Like I know if I just slide around the corner here, take one shot, I'm gonna get him. You could have that mindset, but you're not gonna do it. Why? Because that bow user, chances are, back there with the bow drawn, ready to go, right? And they're if they have Oathkeeper, they're sitting there with it drawn, ready to go. It's ready to rip, right? If they're not, they are pulling it back. Okay, nope, pulling it back, nope, pulling it back, and getting it ready. That way, if you peek at any other time other than the most perfect timing, which is right as they put their bow back to redraw it, you're going to die, right? So, you know, players don't challenge bows, but, you know, I'm not sure why all of a sudden bows are being discussed. You know, and of course by bows, I'm talking about just the general bow, but I want to talk about exotic bows now, because there are 2 exotic bows that I think a lot of people are frustrated by. And Swirly, in his comments, you know, also mentioned this: Wishender and Lemonarch. Now, I wanted to start with Wishender. Wishender, I think, is it's so funny that people are complaining about Wishender, because the only change that it has received in its time since, you know, it was released in Forsaken, right, is it got a slightly, mind you, a slightly faster draw time. Like, it's nothing like the Lemonarch change where they change it from a 684 to a 612. Like, that's a substantial change. No, Lemonarch got changed, like its draw time was changed by like 2 frames or something like that, or 4 frames at 120 FPS. Like, it was changed so, like the change was so minuscule. I really wouldn't even consider it a change. Like, it technically makes it draw a tiny bit faster, but that tiny bit faster, I think, in my opinion, does not affect day-to-day gunfights, right? And the other change that it got is, of course, it was given anti-barrier rounds. Now, anti-barrier doesn't matter. That's irrelevant in PvP. It doesn't pierce, you know, bubbles. It doesn't pierce Titan barricades. It doesn't pierce overshields or anything like that. Like, it is literally has no effect. Yet Wishender is once again kind of coming up. Right, it's coming up in the meta. Okay, like, you know, people are having issues with it. And I think what makes people frustrated about it, and this is especially applies for the Trials game mode, is that it is free wall hacks, right? If you have a 3 stack of players and one of them's using Wishender, there's not really any slick plays you can pull unless you have an Invis Hunter. Because if I'm not mistaken, Invis, you can't see an invisible player through the wall with Wishender, right? So the only thing you can do to counter Wishender is use Invis, which of course not every class has access to. And of course, really only one class / subclass has easy access to, and that's the Hunter, Void Hunter, right? But the balancing factor behind Wishender, in my opinion, is that slow draw time. Like, that time to kill is incredibly slow. It's what is it, an 880? Let me look it up real quick. Let's look up Wishender. But if I'm not mistaken, it's like an 880 draw time, which means 0.88 seconds is its like fastest, like absolute fastest optimal time to kill. Let's hear draw time. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's 780. Okay, so it's a little bit faster, but that is basically 0.78 seconds time to kill. And like I said, that is if you have a perfectly drawn arrow that you loose, like from the time you loose that first perfectly drawn arrow till you draw the next one and shoot it. This is not including the actual draw time. The draw time of this bow is slower than almost every other primary ammo weapon time to kill in the game, right? And it still takes 2 arrows to kill a Guardian. Like, it would be totally different if Wishender one-shot Guardians, right? But again, I don't think people use it for, you know, for the damage that it does or for the draw time. People use it because it gives you that insight as to what your enemy is doing. And I think that regardless of how you look at it, like, people are going to find a way to complain about cheese, like, no matter what you do, right? Like, oh, well, it's cheesy that, you know, he can see us through walls. Yes, but also, I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves, they're kind of putting themselves at a combat disadvantage. Like, if you have a 3 stack of Trials players, right? One of them's using Wishender, they can see through the walls. You can see at the start of the game if somebody's using Wishender. So you can say, hey, they're going to have wall hacks on us. I say we don't really peek unless we absolutely have to. And if we do, we need to do it very quickly, and we need to do it as a team, right? Because they know where we are. Or you could just stay more than 64? I think it's 64 meters away. You can stay more than 64 meters away, and Wishender can't pick you up, right? And there are plenty of weapons that can handle 64 meters. Other bows can handle 64 meters. Scout rifles can handle 64 meters. There's even pulse rifles. You got sniper rifles. You know, you've got a ton of weapons that can handle 64 meters and beyond just fine, right? I don't really see Wishender being problematic because it allows you wall hacks. It's done that forever. It has done that literally since its, you know, conception all the way back in Forsaken. And to my knowledge, I don't think it's been an issue. It's only an issue all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere, is what I'll say. But Wishender, is one, you know, that's one. I think it's pretty fine where it is. The other exotic bow, of course, is Lemon Arc. Now, Lemon Arc is a little bit of a different story because Lemon Arc is kind of, I think it's still hated by a vast majority of player base, right? Lemon Arc, let me start off by saying, I think the reason why people don't like Lemon Arc is because the Lemon Arc meta, we'll call it meta, we'll say it was the Lemon Arc meta, is still salty in people's mouths, right? And that's not, like, that's not a secret. Like, people really hated Lemon Arc back in the day. People did not like encountering Lemon Arcs in their lobbies back in the day. And so when you encounter a Lemon Arc now, even though it's been nerfed and it is nowhere near as potent as it once was, people just don't like that. They don't like that people can still use that exotic, right? And I think that's something that we have to get out of the way first, because I know that there are legitimate reasons why people complain about Lemon Arc, but I think the majority of players that are complaining about Lemon Arc probably are just complaining because it used to be so powerful and so oppressive, right? But let's look at where it is now. Of course, it was taken from a 684 draw time, which hit for 137 for the crit, and then the poison damage ticked for 3 seconds. I don't remember exactly how much damage it was. I think, if I'm not mistaken, with the poison damage paired with the precision hit damage, it was like 183 damage for one arrow. Pre-nerf, that was kind of out of bounds. Couldn't one shot. I mean, it could, I'll take that back. It could one shot if you had certain, you know, buffs and stuff going on, but it was not easy to obtain those buffs, right? You had to have weapons of light, you had to be in a well, you know, you couldn't just have a Lumina user buffing you and you get one shot kills, right? And well, you could, I think, but they had to be on super like low resilience guardians. At any rate, doesn't matter. They've reduced the draw time from a 684 to a 612, which in turns has reduced its damage. Now, I don't know exactly how much damage it does per crit, but they also reduced the time that the poison actually burns you out. And I think that's in the video I made a couple months ago talking about Lemon Arc and why it wasn't overpowered and why there it might have been a skill issue if you're saying it's overpowered. The difference back then, of course, was because Lemon Arc, not only did it chunk your health down, but it also burned your health out over 3 seconds, which prevented healing for at least 3 seconds on top of whatever your resilience was. So if you were, you know, not doing the optimal thing and running very high, recovery, not resilience, talking about recovery here. Every time in the past 30 seconds I've said resilience, I meant to say recovery, right? If you were running even high recovery, right, it still took 3 seconds longer to heal. And in a trials game mode, that is super oppressive, right? Because if you get critted, hit in the head one time, you are in red health and you cannot begin healing. You have to turn around and run, because what players would do in trials, one of them would hit you with Lemon Arc and the other two would just come running. You know, they would come running because all they have to do is get like one hand cannon body shot, right? And you would die, right? And Bungie didn't like that, so they changed it so that now it only burns over 1.75 seconds, if I'm not mistaken, right? I think it's 1.75 seconds. So it burns over 1.75 seconds. It does less damage now. It has a quicker draw time, but I think that is definitely more in line with where I guess it should be. It still does the exotic thing that it's supposed to do well, which is, you know, kind of burn you out over time and stop health regeneration a little bit, but it's not so oppressive as it once was. So why are we seeing so many people talk about it? Like I said, I think I really, you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the only reason why is because at one point it was absolutely, you know, a nightmare to go against. You know, you literally had to just disengage and run away from where enemies were. Now, I don't think it's nearly that bad. Like, yes, like you can still have a trials game, right? Where, oh, sorry, I did not realize that we had been talking for this long. You can still have a trials game where somebody can hit you with Lemon Arc and it chunks your health down and it delays your health regeneration by 1.75 seconds. And theoretically, yes, their team can still rush you down in that time frame, but it's a lot easier to recover from that because your health regenerates, starts sooner, and it's not dealing nearly as much damage as it once did. So I again, with Lemon Arc, I don't know why we're seeing people complain about it, other than the reason that it used to be overpowered, and the fact that people still use it on occasion is frustrating, right? I'll tell you this, I don't remember the last time I've seen Lemon Arc in a game. Like, in fact, I think Tiku's Divination, and we'll talk about Tiku's Divination in just a second, right? But I think Tiku's Divination is more popular right now than Le Monarque, right? And mind you, I don't play Trials, and I don't know what the Trials, like, you know, the meta looked like, you know, this past weekend. Maybe Le Monarque was up there, but in the Sixes playlist, I've seen Tiku's Divination in at least like 4 or 5 games out of the last, I would say, 12 games that I've played, right? That's that's kind of a lot, right? And it's just, it's a weird thing because Tiku's, again, never been an issue. It has never been something that's wildly used. And in my opinion, Tiku's Divination is actually a fantastic bow. Like, that first shot that you can take, you don't have to, you know, it doesn't have to be a fully drawn shot, right? You can literally tap the trigger, and as long as it locks onto an enemy, that arrow will hit the enemy. Then you follow up with its 460 draw time and hit them 1 crits with a perfectly drawn shot, and they're dead. Like, Tiku's Divination, I would say, has the fastest TTK of any bow in the game because of its, you know, the way its exotic perk works and whatnot. But nobody's talking about it. I haven't seen any complaints. I haven't seen any forum posts on it. I haven't seen any Reddit posts complaining about it. It's something I've noticed in my games recently. Now, I will also say this, outside of Tiku's Divination, I haven't noticed an uptick in bow usage. So are we currently like rolling into a bow meta? Maybe. You know, like, I know bows are getting a little tiny bit more traction than they have before, but I wouldn't go out and say that we are entering a bow meta. I wouldn't say necessarily that bows need to be nerfed right now. And again, this is for regular Crucible gameplay. This is not talking about checkmate and stuff. But yeah, I just think it's interesting that people are choosing to complain about bows of all things. But finally, I do want to talk just briefly about checkmate. And in checkmate, I do think that without some type of damage boost, lightweight bows with those really fast cooldowns, not cooldowns, draw times, should not be able to two-shot Guardians. And if I'm not mistaken, things like Tyranny of Heaven, you know, and stuff like that can get like as low as like a 460 draw time, if I'm not mistaken. Those are really, really oppressive in that mode because they can still 2-tap. While everything else, except for hand cannons, has a longer TTK, right? And even hand cannons, I mean, again, if you're using Oath Keepers, you know, and maybe something like Tiku's Divination, of course, but even a Tyranny of Heaven, a good PvP Tyranny of Heaven and Oath Keepers, you're killing lightning speed in checkmate. Like, you are killing it incredibly fast in checkmate. So I think that when it comes to those lightweight bows, maybe just reduce their damage so that they can't get a 2-crit kill without even something simple like Radiance, right? Like, if you have Radiance, then they can get a 2-shot kill. But if they don't have Radiance, then you can't. I don't know. I think that's like I said, when it comes to checkmate, it's a little bit different story. But I think all the other bows in checkmate are fine. But yeah, sorry, we've talked for a long time. I didn't even mean to talk this long about bows. I didn't realize that I was so passionate about bows. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on the up and coming bow meta, right? Like, do you really think that bows are going to be taking a place in the meta and going to become problematic? Do you think that they already are problematic? You know, obviously, like I said, I don't think they're problematic right now, but I also haven't been exposed to a whole lot of bow users. So if you're noticing an uptick in bow usage, tell me why you think that is. Tell me the issues that you think that bows bring. Or if you're on the other side, if you think bows are just fine, tell me why you think that they are just fine, because I don't really have a formulated opinion on this whole topic just yet, right? We need to see how it plays out. We need to start seeing how bows are, you know, handling the Crucible and how many people are going to start using bows and stuff in the future before I make a formulated decision on, yes, they need to be nerfed, or no, they don't need to be nerfed. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Of course, if you liked today's video, drop a like. It helps the channel out tremendously. Of course, subscribe for more daily Destiny content and conversations such as this. And do me a favor, watch the videos you see on the end screen, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you will like them. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see y'all next time. Bye for now.